Bonsoir, bienvenue dans le Manifeste mondial de...
Good evening, welcome to the World Manifesto of the Anthropocene.
De dire à chaque entrée de nouvelles sessions.
So we're going to say what we say at every session. We have entered the Anthropocene. We are the Anthropocene. We are the community of the world. We live together through climate change, through the acidification of the oceans, through the rising sea levels, the extinction of species, pandemics, famine, the pollution of soil, wildfires, migration, floods, droughts, general urbanization, social inequality. The list is long. We can no longer control our impact. Everything is changing around us, and whether we like it or not, we are exploring our own lives and our environments. From our close environments, living environments, what do we want to express? Where does our feeling of justice lie? What are our ideas and intentions to change things? Or do we feel like earthlings? Let's speak. Let's share our opinions and let's begin dialogue. That's how we are going to open session 9 with a message, with a manifesto. And this session number 9 is going to talk about various countries, various territories. So we're going to continue our journey around the world. And the first session was going to take us to Morocco, Poland, Sweden, Slovenia, Switzerland, Norway, Nigeria, Slovakia, Monaco, Tunisia, Serbia, Montenegro, and the Netherlands. The list is long. It is added to the list of countries we have been lucky enough to visit and speak to in our various discussions. So the process is going to be the same. We're going to start by broadcasting a few videos which were sent to us as part of the manifesto, and then we're going to talk to the different participants who represent the countries I just mentioned, and then we're going to have a wider dialogue with the people who are going to join us as the discussion progresses. So without further ado, here are the videos. So we have something of a technical problem. So we're going to move on to our round table discussion. I hope everyone's ready, and hopefully we'll be able to watch the videos later. So our speakers this evening come from different countries. We have Ilyas Mousannif, who comes from Morocco, Andrés Walliser from Spain. Hello, Andrés. I'm happy to see you again after a few years. Janez Marolt, you are from Slovenia. Janez Marolt, and we have Henning from Norway. We have Robert Pyka from Poland. And later we'll have Dominic Bourg from Switzerland, hopefully. And I am not alone around this particular table here. We have Adrián and Lorette, who are going to accompany us during this session, and they are coordinating and taking part in the discussion. And we have live illustration of all the messages. I thought we would start with the videos, but to bounce off the videos, Robert Pyka, you made a video. We didn't see it, but maybe you could introduce it or talk about it. Yes. Good evening, everybody. So in my video, I talk about the topic of peri-urbanization, suburbanization. So this is an issue which I think is a problem not only in Poland, but everywhere in Europe. So in the video, I say that since the year 2000, nearly 1.3 million hectares of land in Europe has been turned into urban space, 80% of which was formerly farmland, which is extraordinary. And in a context in a difficult context in Eastern Europe in particular, we continue to expand our cities and to destroy farmland. But above all, I want to urge people to think about, people in cities in particular, to think about this issue. Especially in denser cities. In Poland, cities are less dense. People believe space is a limited resource. It's up to the mayors, to the people running cities, to gain awareness and adopt a wider outlook, because they are often driven by potential profits of potential inhabitants, but they don't really think about the fact that inhabitants are often going to move away because of the pressure of new populations on infrastructures, in particular transport, education, healthcare. So my video really focused on this urban sprawl, which is very worrying in all countries of Europe, Western Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe. We don't yet control this phenomenon. So I'm happy to be able to continue to talk about this, because we also have the video. We have fixed the problem, and you've introduced your video very well, and we will talk about this further in the following discussion. There are many architects in this session, so I think that the theme of cities, of urban spaces, will be very key part of the discussion. So let's take a look at the videos, and here we're going to see your video after the video from Morocco. So I am Saida. I am from Casablanca in Morocco. I am a retired teacher. I am the regional secretary of the Haute Energie NGO. It's an environmental association. As someone who's been active in the environmental sphere, we need to be conscious that our blue planet is not something we have inherited. It's actually a treasure that belongs to all generations, whether it be present generations or future generations. This blue planet, which is made of earth, water, air, sky, forest, biodiversity, wildlife, plant life, resources, energy, is being destroyed by the daily activities of humans. Rainfall, irregular temperatures, snow melts, floods, droughts are due to climate change. And this is the result of our human activities, our irresponsible activities. And this period of lockdown, as a result of COVID-19, must serve as a period in which we must think about the fact that Earth does not need us to exist and to breathe, and to exist well and to breathe well without our presence. This Earth does not need us, so it is us who need it. So let's look after it. Let's take care of this blue planet by reducing our ecological footprint. Our Earth is like a mother who has given life to many children, but a child cannot have more than one mother. The urban sprawl and suburbanization is a major issue in the 21st century. Even if, as a general rule, the European population is dropping, the urban and peri-urban populations are expanding. There are fewer of us who are taking up more and more space. According to studies, between 2000 and 2018, 1.3 million hectares of land in Europe were transformed into urban space, 80% of which were formerly agricultural land. The situation is very worrying in Eastern European countries. In Poland, where I come from, since we joined the EU, the dynamic of horizontal urbanization has taken over, even if the urban areas are losing their populations more quickly. The suburbanization dynamic is 3 times more than the average in Europe. Let's take an analogy. As if parents saw their children leaving their house and then decided to expand and extend their house into the garden. It's not logical from the ecological perspective. We must also point out that 40% of European cities that are growing demographically fail when it comes to improving the efficiency of their land use. So the negative consequences of this urban sprawl are multiple. From an ecological point of view, primarily, natural areas and agricultural areas are being reduced in proximity to cities. And the emissions of CO2 between urban areas and suburban areas is also rising. So it's through the construction of new facilities in peri-urban areas that will help this. But these suburban areas have contributed to segregation of different groups of individuals through gated communities, for example. We must not forget that soil is a non-renewable resource. It is a limited resource which must also serve to inhabit future generations.
Hello,
to house future generations.
And I say hello from snowy Stockholm in Sweden. These days we seldom got snow. Fall is endless and winter is just for a few days instead of months. We get much rainfall and much wind. New species of invasive plants and animals, such as slugs, also threatens to outgrow our local vegetables and plants.
Hi, I'm Jacob. Here at our small farm, we try to produce as much fruit and vegetable as possible to minimize carbon emissions and pesticides used from industrial farming. We sell the surplus and exchange for favors from the neighbors. And we use manure from the chickens and from the horses from the neighbors for fertilization. And this summer we will have some new ducks that will help to fend off the slugs. We hope to inspire others to also grow their own food, either in their garden or at a windowsill or an allotment.
Merci pour toutes ces vidéos.
Thank you for all those videos and those contributions. We have seen that the question of urgency is very present. This lady from Casablanca who alerts us to her concerns, which we share in our own geographical areas. And I would like to take advantage of this quite specific panel. It revolves around a central question in the Anthropocene. It's the question of architecture and the way in which we organize, generally speaking. So what is the architecture of the Anthropocene? How are buildings going to evolve? How is our way of inhabiting them evolving? I think Mr. Pyka said something about peri-urbanization. In Switzerland, where I come from, keeping certain areas ring-fenced is difficult to deal with sometimes, but it's also a strength. It's something you know about, Adrián, because you worked in Greater Geneva, and it's also an opportunity to speak first to you, Andres. You know Geneva, you came recently, and the way in which we organize ourselves. I think the experiments and the trials carried out in Madrid recently can be a good starting point for this debate. Can you introduce to us the urban dynamic from a societal perspective, but also a spatial organization perspective?
y a toujours un petit délai des fois avec la traduction. Peut-être mettre ton micro.
Could you please put your microphone on to respond to the question, or maybe you didn't hear the question?
Yeah. I'm saying that I had prepared something more on something else, more general reflection on waste management at a global level. But if you want, I can speak about Madrid, whatever you feel.
Ah, tu peux faire les deux. Peut-être.
You could do both, maybe. Maybe start with what you had planned to do, and maybe talk about Madrid later, and speak to the other panelists about it after.
Sure, yeah. Well, basically, I want to address something. Well, my name is Andrés Walliser. I'm from Universidad Complutense de Madrid. I work in the social change department, applied sociology department, and I work with urban issues, urban sociology, and basically participation and planning, etc. So I want to address the issue of commodities, of consumption, and what happens with what we consume, around the question of what is offending our moral conscience and our sense of justice. So I would like to say that in Spanish, the word cómodo means comfortable. And it shares the same Latin root with the word commodity, which is a commodity, something which is useful as a valuable thing. So from my point of view, an ethical attitude in Anthropocene is renunciation to consumption in our perceived needs and desires for good. In other words, degrowth in a state of perpetual growth. But consumption makes us renounce to renunciation somehow. Goods brings us comfort, experience, status, ostentation, and even a sense of belonging. So we need to buy goods constantly, exponentially, that we change for other goods that we don't need, but that give us the promise of something more comfortable with an improved user experience. So Anthropocene, for me, is the incapacity of managing this process and the sheer accumulation of discarded goods. Think about electronics. Think about anything that operates with a wire or with a battery, plug. And we look around, just around here, and we can see a few around us. Every year, electronic waste produced in the whole world, and this is maybe a little bit of trivial data, but it gives you an idea. The electronic waste produced in the whole world in a year weighs the same as 4,500 Eiffel Towers. So we're talking about a big amount. In Europe, most of the artifacts we have a rather short life, very few years, either because their obsolescence is programmed or because we seek something new that we will make our experience more intense or a life more comfortable. So at that point, the chain value of objects like this, for instance, is over. But where do they go? Most of us we believe ourselves as environmentally conscious citizens, and we take it, often with a car, to a special place to be recycled, generally relying on the local administration. But the truth is that most of these artifacts, from a phone to a fridge, a TV, anything with a wire, insist, or a battery, start being part of a new value change as something different, not as a telephone or as a fridge, but as a scrub. And they land in Africa or in Asia, but generally most Spanish scrap lands in Africa in electronic dumps, like the one we have in Accra, the capital of Ghana, and it's called Agobloshi. Local people called Agobloshi, which is a very long name, call it Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not very big, it's a few hectares, but there, children, teenagers, and young adults scrap and extract the valuable metals of the valuable metal parts of our components, the former electronic treasures, the ones we were desiring, and they do it just with fire and a hammer, bare hands, and feet in worn-out flip-flops. So metal then is sold and resold and melded and turned into lingots, and then sent back to the place where the electronic artifacts were produced and assembled. So in some ways, in the way remains in Agloboshi, the health, the life of these genuine recyclers. And this is one of the most contaminated spots in the world. And this is just all this process happens. It's a very, very fascinating, very complex process that I would like to share with you. But this all happens just to us experimenting again the improved experience of consumption. So I really would, I would encourage you. Probably some of you know about this, but if you don't know it, it's a very big amount of the things that we put in a green point in Europe and the United States land in Accra. And there's a whole transformation industry. There's a lot of videos and documentaries and articles about that, and it's very dramatic to see it. Last year I had the luck of being there. Well, not last year, 2 years ago, and exchange and spend a kind of study trip there. And I just wanted to share this with you. So that's what I prepare, and I'm open to talk about any other things that you might be interested in, but I don't want to take a lot of time.
Merci Andrés. Je pense qu'on aura l'occasion de...
Thanks a lot, Andrés. I think we'll have the opportunity a bit later to speak about Madrid, but maybe we can speak a little bit about geography and the scale of consumption and the fact that it goes beyond any continent. It's more global. Cities consume a lot of resources, many goods, and they cannot manage the production of their resources and the waste management. In Norway, for instance, or Nigeria, because Mr. Nimo Basse is with us. So whether it is in Norway, Nigeria, or Morocco, just feel free to take the floor to speak about this issue. And later, if you want, we will start speaking about urban issues. So does anyone want to take the floor?
Monsieur Basset ou Monsieur Kloumann en Norvège?
I can share with you what I have presented. I haven't had the chance to make a video, but I have presented the...
So I haven't had the opportunity to make a video, but...
my name is Henning. I'm an architect from Norway. Thank you for letting me participate in this event. In this world of so many crises, I must say that I feel privileged living in my country. But this sense of being privileged is also something that connects to a form of shame, because the Norwegian economy is it's based on fossil fuels, and we have one of the highest emissions of CO2 per inhabitants, and etc. And we are definitely not doing enough. Not for climate and not for equality, not here in Norway or globally. And to reach a more sustainable way of life, I think we need a better redistribution and a better form of dialogue to better manage global resources. And I'll come to the urbanization team after a while. And we need a dialogue-based way of communicating, a way to avoid conflict. And also we need to take back the tradition as a platform for new development and in managing our resources. And I think this definitely is for in my profession. This last crisis is affecting the less fortunate of us, as all crises, especially or also here in Norway. And our growth-based model of society is now showing its weakness, and it causes more inequality, especially now during the crisis, and also more inequality between cities and the rural areas. At least here, I see this here in Norway. And this also leads to this more class-divided society. I'm currently involved now in the startup of 2 small projects bringing development to typically small places or villages here in Norway. And I hope this can be a small contribution to the creating of value in these communities, created both by them and for them with local materials and resources. and also as a small contribution to a more sustainable and robust local communities. And I think and I hope that this kind of development can counteract to the tendency to the ever-growing growth in the cities, in the big cities, which in long terms is not sustainable. It's not going so well, at least now. And I hope also that it can be a small contribution to counteract the tendency to the tendency where economically margins goes to the big cities at the expense of rural areas. Like in a way of moving capital from the cities to the rural areas. And this could be a way of obtaining also more equality. It's fundamental, I think, that we build less but better, and in this, and that we do more transformation of the existing. And this is also a way of maintaining the tradition. All this to move capital and resources from the centers to local redevelopment with a dialogue-based communication, maintaining tradition and obtaining more equality, at least less inequality. I think that reflects or can be translated to the necessities we also have on a global level as well. And that was it. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Peut-être sans transition.
Thanks a lot. Well, without any transition, in order to go on listening with our panelist, Mr. Marolt, you live in Slovenia. You're an architect, a photographer of architecture, if I'm not wrong. Good evening. My French is a bit basic, so maybe I'll speak English.
It's true. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great thing we communicate in this way. It's a big deal. I mean, we're going to pieces, really. Apart from what's happening with the environment, it's crazy. I've noticed how in our minds parallel worlds are kind of blossoming, really. For example, there is a politician in Slovenia I really dislike, and I'm quite a tolerant guy. And I'm moderate in my activism. In all means, I go to demonstration every once in a while, and I post a thing I'm angry about every once in a while. And the Facebook and stuff keeps giving me the information about how this particular guy screws something up, although the media house itself supports him. So, I mean, come on. I mean, we're becoming more and more locked in some little bubbles of thought and of everything, and we lose connection with what's going on, and that's not going anywhere. So I think this is very crucial, what we have right now. I mean, we're a drop in the ocean of people, really. But it's very important. So thank you very much. And I think this a good thing from this corona that has been happening here all around, of course, is that we kind of maybe just a little bit rethought the importance of having local resources and just thinking where we're going to get the food tomorrow, and maybe to take care of each other and stuff, and don't just consume that much, although we still do at the end, or I'll speak for myself. Yeah. I might pass the word further.
Merci. Merci pour ce témoignage. Et
Thanks a lot for sharing your views. We can feel what you've said, and it's one of the objectives of our meeting tonight. After listening to the other ones, maybe you can speak again to tell us what it means for you to speak across borders, to listen and to share different experiences. Ilyas, you're in Morocco. You're an architect. We're very happy to welcome you here. So I'll let you introduce yourself. So, as you said, my name is Ilyas Mousannif. I'm a young architect. I got my diploma 6 months ago here in Morocco, and I've been invited to speak by Adrián. So thank you for inviting me over. So when I heard the content of the manifesto, the first thing I thought about were my lessons at school, geological ones. And I quickly understood that our era is really nothing in comparison with the long history of Earth. And it's important to say it. I also think it's important to highlight the transition we are going through as a human species, and the way we're impacted of the environmental change, trying to adapt, even trying to control nature, but it's impossible, of course. And we are faced with the consequences of this intent. And I would like to react to the idea introduced by Pyka when he spoke about the fact that cities in Poland are faced with huge challenges. Actually, he also spoke about my city, Marrakesh, that is also faced with this horizontal expansion. And very quickly, I could picture myself in what he was describing, and I thought that I could also add some food for thought taken from my experience in Marrakesh. As he said, the land in cities is a limited resource that will end sooner or later, and here in Marrakesh, it's an incentive for investing. It's a kind of reserve of resources that the state wants to use in order to create new job positions and get new investments. Urban planning is not respected, and as a consequence, we have huge gaps in the city network, and now we can realize how stupid our leaders were. And this is what I wanted to demonstrate in my thesis, the point that it is important to bring together rural and urban areas, to mix them up, to try to integrate with one another in order to redesign a new urban planning with less differences between both areas, and to allow both areas to live in harmony and not competing with one another as complementary areas. Thanks a lot, Ilyas. You're right, our relationship with land, the way we plan our cities is a central point. Mr. Bassey, you live in Nigeria. We all know the city of Lagos with the same issues, actually, of urban planning. I don't know if you want to speak about that. Nevertheless, it was a transition to move towards you. So good evening, Nimo Bassey. Can you hear us?
Hello, good evening. Yes, I hear you.
On est enchanté de pouvoir aussi dialoguer avec vous.
Can you hear me?
It's a huge pleasure to be here with you.
Je vous laisse la parole.
Yes, we can hear you. So I'll give you the floor now if you want to take it.
All right. Sorry, I don't know if you're hearing me. My internet is a bit unsteady, so I'm putting up my photo. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, yes. We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I needed to take the video off so that the internet could perform a bit better. Thank you for this evening gathering, or if it's morning for some people, wherever you are. And I thank you for the issues that have been raised so far. Today happens to be a very happy day for me because after 13 years of fighting, 4 farmers in Nigeria got judgment against Shell in the Netherlands at The Hague in the appeal court. When the court decided, the case has been going on for 13 years, and today it was decided that Shell Nigeria has to pay compensation to these poor farmers for damage that has been done to the environment. This took a long time, and it speaks to my mind the difficulty of getting corporations and financial speculators and politicians to understand the harm of continual dependence on fossil fuels, continual dependence on overconsumption, on speed, on so-called cheap energy without counting the real cost. And in my experience, the real cost of fossil fuel is human blood and misery for those who are living in the fields where these resources are being extracted. Apart from this, I see also the challenge with the way the trajectories of that human development and progress is going, especially with new technologies. New technologies are advancing so quickly that there's little scope for regulation or control. And I'm talking about extinction technology in particular, which is threatening. Some environmentalists claim they can use this technology to preserve certain species, but we do also know that it could be used to destroy certain species. And these species, the complex connection of species on planet Earth are essential for us to live well as humans. There are some species that live inside us. There are some that live in the soil, some in the air, everywhere. There are millions and millions of species, and we're all interdependent. But to say that we can pick a few and bring them to extinction through extreme genetic engineering, through processes like gene drive, although we could do it, but we don't have to do it. And this is what I believe. The future will not depend on who can use whatever technology just because it can be developed. We cannot use all the technologies that are possible because some are clearly harmful. For example, atomic bomb, nuclear bomb technologies is already owned by some countries. Many bombs in silos or wherever they're kept, but nobody's using them. So what do you need that for? And so we need to look more at a situation where we live in a way that also makes life possible for other species. I would say a democratic self-determination, not just for humans or for communities or territories, but for other beings that we share the earth with. True democracy, not the one that is won every 4 years in elections, but the one that allows people perpetually to agree on the way we live and the way that promotes the good life. In my language, we call it etiwem, which means good life. And this good life is not based on how much power you have. It's not based on how much capital you have. It's not based on how much power you have. It's based on how well you live, how you connect with your neighbor, connect with other people, strangers, and how you share things, how you cooperate, not how you compete. Competition is leading the world to destruction. And so we have to return to nature. We have to be less wasteful. I mean, we talked about the waste dump, electronic waste dump in Accra, a lot in Lagos, at a place called Computer Village in Ikeja, Lagos. A lot of used, wretched electronic equipment are shipped to Africa. And most of these, when you buy them, you are not even permitted to test them. So you buy them, it's like you are gambling. When you get home, you find whether they're working or not, or you dump it. And so people are consciously dumping these things, and it's very wasteful. The same thing as the waste in terms of food. We should support. I see a future where we consume less. We support smallholder farmers, the street corner farmer, the farmers in the villages, those who use 30% of the resources and produce 70% of the food, not the industrial agriculture that uses 70% of resources and produce less than 30% of the food. So the good life will be built on ethical living, solidarity, cooperation, less competition, and less war. I get very worried, and I'm concluding my thoughts on this, especially the way the world is struggling to raise money for climate finance. And this has been such a big struggle right from Copenhagen in 2009, a big struggle, and everybody's dragging their feet, trying to turn this into loans so that poor countries will get poorer and get more indebted. Whereas the fossil fuel industry that should actually shut down is investing close to $2 trillion in new projects, in searching for fossil fuels in places like Kofango, in Namibia, in UNESCO protected areas. And the world is also, rich countries are spending about a similar amount in warfare. About $2 trillion in warfare. A time that we should be building solidarity, building resilience, and strengthening one another. I think we have to change direction.
Merci. On est content, je pense,
Thanks a lot. We're very happy to share this day with you. I'm very happy to be connected with you for all these reasons. With you, Mr. Basset, and with the other guests, it is also for us an opportunity to follow these dynamics, and I'll give you the floor, Adrián, because I know you've got things to say for this session. But in order to take advantage of the situation, to take advantage of this commitment and this comment you made about good life and the fact of seeking a good life, and at the same time to carry out our fights, and I know that you've carried out many of them, and you go on. But fighting is not anything. It's also is not anything but being connected with other people, and it's your expertise. But I would like everybody to tell me what does it feel to be here to speak with people from other countries. I know you're used to doing it, but to be all together in the framework of this festival of Anthropocene, what do you want to tell each other? Who wants to start? Actually, I would like to take the floor. I realized, and it's a bit surprising, to see that at the end of the day, we're all faced with the same issues. And before today, I was a bit struggling at grasping this idea that we are faced with the same challenges. And I think it's already a good starting point, because if we can say that we've got a common problem, I think we can manage it in a better way. So it's a very good starting point.
Quelqu'un d'autre aurait envie de réagir aussi?
Who wants to react? Okay.
Janez, peut-être?
Janez, maybe?
Sinon, je te donne la parole volontiers, Adrián. Hein. Je sais que tu avais.
Otherwise, you can say something, Adrián, if you like.
Quant à certains éléments, c'est vraiment très intéressant cette notion que Nimo apporte de good life, non? Ça me paraît très intéressant parce que à l'école européenne nous
So this notion of the good life is interesting because we believe that we are building reality. It is by projecting, by prospecting in a transverse, intercultural and citizen-minded way, a world and a society that is worth living in and that we can reclaim. To achieve a good life, as Nimo was saying. So throughout the day-to-day, the word nature has constantly reappeared. We've talked about getting closer to nature, getting back to nature. But we are nature in a certain way. We belong to nature. This idea of belonging to nature, this idea of empathizing and developing an ethical approach to the earth, to cities, to inhabiting them in a healthy way is probably necessary. So it is important, first of all, to combine the social with the ecological, to guarantee the freedom and rights of all populations from south to north and from north to south. And we must not we must think about not only the notion of protecting, but also restoring, repairing ecological processes and values, not only in natural environments, but in urban areas too. I think that this health crisis that we are living through now highlights the vulnerability of humans to pathogens. But the transcendental new urban assets of the Anthropocene must be reviewed, must be re-examined. There should be a right to water, a right to air, to housing, to healthcare, to food, to education, i.e. Living conditions and the quality of life, environmental hypertoxicity, lifestyles, alienation, inequality. The logic of extracting resources, but also our own souls, damages us and damages the environments we inhabit. So the idea today, the points we often hear made nowadays, that humans are the real virus on our planet, seems to me to be a little bit simplistic, but also ambivalent and even dangerous. Because we have harmed the planet, yes, and we have harmed our loved ones and those we live among, but it is by gaining awareness and through the notions of empathy, belonging and eco-dependency, notions that were crucial to native peoples and ancient peoples, that we can reclaim. We are lucky to be able to collaborate, to try and reclaim these values, to renew hope and make life more possible. So growing urban areas, the urban sprawl we have talked about. What can we do? In this context of pandemics with hyperdense cities, these hyperdense cities are not desirable. This population density is being called into question. So can we build in a world of growing, of demographic growth? Can we both repair and build? Can we reconstruct in the context of urban development? Can any of our guests position themselves and give their own insights on this question Adrián has addressed to you?
Je crois que M. Pyka, vous allez aborder.
And thank you, Adrian. Really a lot of interesting points. And also thank you for the invitation. I think, like Adrian says, that we are nature, and that also gives us this like borderless connection for the international collaboration, and because we are all depending on each other, and also this with the hyper-dense cities that are not desirable. And I think that's a really good point. It's shown now during this crisis that it doesn't work that well, even though cities has its benefits or good things for efficient transportation and everything. I think also to reinforce like less urbanized areas and to better the conditions in not the most dense areas is also a way of having a redevelopment or another way of development that's not based on growth, like more in the degrowth way that Andres was talking about earlier as well. And that can also give us a better balance in our economical systems that won't only be focused into the ever-growing growth within the city centers.
Monsieur Pyka, vous voulez réagir aussi sur ces questions-là?
Oui, en fait, il y avait autant. Mr. Pyka, would you like to react to this? I would say, first of all, that I am also very happy to be able to take part in this discussion. I've been living and thinking about these topics for the last few months. Having been invited to Lyon to take part, I've been working with areas where there have been trials and experiments carried out by inhabitants, notably when it comes to housing. So I believe strongly that the answer to these issues of the Anthropocene can come from a bottom-down approach, not necessarily from institutions, not necessarily from politicians, but from people who live in urban areas, users who play with the different rules of the game, who step out of the box, who try things out. So it's interesting, and I enjoy feeling that I'm in a place where people are thinking experimentally. In Lyon, in particular, in Saint-Étienne, because that's my research project in Saint-Étienne. And when it comes to the density of cities, obviously the density of a city does not guarantee a quality of life. There needs to be a different approach to the way land is used. There must be a way of reclaiming land or inventing new ways of using spaces in a way that is very exhaustive. For example, I'm talking about hybrid uses of public spaces which are closed in the daytime or in the evening or in the afternoon, and which are empty. But you are right. This pandemic has demonstrated the relevance of the idea of having inhabitants who can access green spaces within 15 minutes walk of where they are, within a 1 kilometer perimeter or 1 kilometer radius. I would also like to mention something else when we talk about suburbanization. Today, the phenomenon is also changing the face of cities. We can't go back in time. And these peri-urban areas, these suburban areas, are no longer just dormitories for people who work in towns, in the center. And we can't go back in time. And maybe a secondary point is that these suburban areas, which are no longer dormitories and which attract investment, can maybe release the pressure on city centres. And these suburban areas can be independent entities in their own right. We can't go back in time, but we can do things differently. When I hear about trials, experimentation, participation, and a change of spatial organization, that makes me think of Madrid, and you, Andres, maybe you can enlighten us on certain topics, because coming out of the 2008 financial crisis, Madrid was a subject of a lot of participation, a lot of trials, a lot of ways, different ways of organizing a city. And one example was a project around the care, cuidado as you call it. This is something we can be inspired by, even when we talk about the Anthropocene, because there are only a few minutes left. I would like you to conclude this discussion, because in 3 minutes we're going to hand the floor to a new group. But the world is turning quite fast, so we have to go fast as well. We're trying to follow the different time zones. So I'd let you conclude, Andres. And I'd like to thank you all, and maybe a few words on the city of Madrid, Andres.
I'm very glad that you're there. I just want to two things about Madrid. We're living right now a very interesting period. I'm just working with François de Gasperi, which has been invited me as a member of the institute in Lyon, and very interesting, very dramatic moment too, in which we went through these government with a new municipalist coalition that start building a lot in the territory, in the communities, with projects, with new concepts like prototypes as policy, as policy tools. And now we have just the other side. We have a coalition of right-wing, center, and ultra-right-wing. There's a gradual dismantling of everything. So this is bad news, and I think it's really has to do a lot with Anthropocene and the notion we have about, of environment, and about how politics mingle with globalization and global change. And in the other side, I just want a reflection, maybe, which is interesting as a conclusion, which is how we are in an incredibly complex environment in cities, in which we have all these new things that are coming, and some of them are apparently very, very sustainable and very cool and very green, and they're very good solutions. I'm thinking about transportation, and then we scratch a little bit, and we found that it's platform economy, platform capitalism, and it leads to very, very harsh and complex, aggression to the environment and to society. I'm just thinking about all these scooters or electric bikes that are launched from one day to another in a lot of cities in Europe, using legal regulatory gaps. And a company just drops 3,000 scooters in a city like Madrid, and everybody becomes very happy because it's very fun, it's new, and it has an incredible set of consequences. They are very polluting. They need to be charged. They generate very, very low quality added value in terms of labor, because it's people that have to handle these scooters and drop them in their own vans and load them at home for a little pay. They also break a little bit some of the dynamics of pedestrian mobilization, because they just cover the very short spaces of 1 mile, 1.5 miles that we used to do walking. Now we do it on scooters. So it's kind of perverse. And I think we should really be very, very thorough and look at all these little details that are not so cool as they look.
Merci.
And this is the definition of Anthropocene for me too.
Merci André, je suis vraiment désolé de devoir te couper comme ça. Je remercie.
So I'm really sorry for having to interrupt you. We're going to have to move on now to the next group. Thank you to all of you for taking part. I hope you will want to discuss these matters further, and you are motivated to do so. We're moving on to the next group. Thank you.